everybody, and welcome back to ESO Live. I'm Jessica Folsom. Who's that?
I'm Gina Bruno. and who are we?
Yep, and we've got a great show lined up for you today. We're actually going to dive right in, so let's take a look at the lineup, and then we'll get started.
So, welcome. We are glad to be back. We took a short hiatus a couple weeks ago, but we're back now, obviously, because you're watching us. So we're going to kick off everything talking about the current game balance that is on the PTS. Joining us is going to be Creative Director Rich Lambert and our lead combat designer Eric Roble.
And then once we wrap up with that, we're going to dive into the two remaining Warden skill lines. Last show we looked at the Animal Companion skill line. This time we're going to look at the Green Balance and Winter's Embrace skill lines and show you all those abilities and morphs and passives. And as always, we'll have a giveaway throughout the show.
Sometime during the show, it'll be a surprise, so you want to watch the whole thing.
So we have a lot to get into today, so we're going to go ahead and dive right in. We actually have the guys here with us.
Here they are.
Hey, how you doing?
Rich Lambert and Eric Roble. Hi, guys.
Hey,
Hi.
how you doing?
Rich is our creative director for ESO, and then Eric Roble, of course, our lead combat designer. Both have been on the show numerous times now, so you are veteran guests now.
Getting really good at this.
Thanks for coming back, even after having been on a few times.
Sure.
They
always-
get
We've
scared
tricked
away, yeah.
you.
It's yes.
So, elephant in the room, let's discuss the current changes that are on the PTS right now. We did a lot of balancing with the class abilities and the champion system. Just so we're all on the same page, do you just want to reiterate the overall goal of all of these changes? Because there were kind of a lot.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
The key thing in a lot of the changes we're making is diversity, so that players have a lot of different options and a lot of different cool builds that they can make, and that all of those are useful and effective in terms of, you know, I can get good healing output for this, or I'm doing a lot of damage when I'm doing this type of build. So we're looking at that in terms of, you know, each of the different classes, you know, and now we have the Warden to include with that. And then also the way the characters are creating, you know, their different builds with their gear as well. So there's a lot of different things we're looking at overall, and to get that major thing of having a lot of diversity and a lot of different cool options that the players can explore and build and create.
And
Yeah,
was this
and
based kind of on seeing just a few builds kind of dominating the use charts?
To some degree, but you know, the big thing for us too is our gameplay was designed with, you know, resource management being a fundamental part of the gameplay loop.
As opposed to cooldowns.
As opposed to just, you know, we don't have cooldowns in our game. We want you to manage your resources and have that be a choice. Right now on live, that isn't a choice. And so you can go full out damage, full out, you know, burst, and you don't really have to trade anything for that. And we want to get back to the, I'm making a conscious decision. Do I try to out-sustain this person? Do I try to burst them down? When do I do those types of things?
Right.
Okay.
So, like we mentioned earlier, there were a lot of changes that came on at once. We saw in the forums, particularly Dinoned, one of our players, he was just kind of wondering why we made so many drastic changes all at once and what the reasoning was behind that.
Yeah, because in the past we've kind of done little bits and pieces here and there.
Bits and pieces, sure. I think the big one on that is we don't, in general, want to test things on live. We don't want to do small incremental changes and then have the, you know, go out on live without a full PTS cycle. And that's what this affords us to do, is to iterate on those changes and spend the time up front. And I don't know if you want to go over some of the process stuff, but spend the time up front to figure out exactly what we're doing and do the math behind it. Like, that's a lot of the things that players don't actually see because it's all behind the scenes, is why we decided to change what we did and how we went about doing it.
Sure. And just real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt. That's
No,
what I
go
do
ahead.
every
Yeah.
single show.
No. Anything you
We
got.
know you guys have a lot of questions in chat. We're going to kind of get through talking through some things first, and then we'll try and take a couple questions after they're finished explaining
Yeah,
some
because some
things.
of what they're talking about may answer some of your questions.
Exactly.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, so further to that point, in terms of the drastic changes, there's also a ton of new content, right? And we wanted to support that with the balance changes that we've made, because you have a new class, you have battlegrounds, and you have a new trial. And this is, one of the biggest updates we've ever done, right?
Well, we've never added a new class before to the game.
Yeah, exactly. So, we wanted to make sure all those things were even, and it supported, that sort of core philosophy that Rich was talking about of people activating abilities and thinking about when they're activating which types of abilities and stuff like that.
Okay.
That makes sense. I think it makes sense. So we see this question coming up a lot, why we don't do more balance tweaks during incremental patches and just lump them all into an update. Sleepy Troll was actually asking that question on the forums too, like why do we wait every 3 or 6 months to do this rather than making it happen over, every couple weeks or so?
Sure. So part of that is what we just talked about, but the other side of it too is players like to learn and establish their build. It takes time, it takes effort,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of resources to set your build up the way you want to.
Now they have
and if it's changing on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, that's really frustrating.
Like I just spent all this time to get this gear,
Right.
and now you change it out from under me. Whereas at least you'll have a couple months before the next update
and
comes out.
that's a big key thing as
Right.
well.
And then also for us, the feedback we get on the PTS is extremely valuable. And being able to go through an iterative process and make a couple tweaks to it before we're really happy with the change, and then it can go out to live is a lot better than just we just throw it out on live and it's just there out in the open, right? And there have been an example is like spear shards, right? Is we changed it, we got some feedback, we have some more changes for the next update of the PTS, which will actually go over a little bit further in the show. And in the past, there have been other examples of that with like the block costs or the werewolf abilities where, we made some changes, we got some feedback, we made some more changes. And that iterative process is really what gets us to the best quality game that we can make.
And one of the other really big questions that comes up in addition to why don't you guys do this more often is how do you decide what you change? You've got so many options.
That one's a lot bigger discussion as well. But I'm
sure.
The kind of the TLDR version, if you will, is a lot of it is taking feedback from players, from forums, from /feedback, from bugs. We all play the game, contrary to what a lot of people on the forums say. We all play the game as well, and so a lot of that feedback comes from our experiences on live and seeing what we're doing and talking with other people as well. And then BI data is another big one.
Yeah,
Can you
and
explain what that is?
Yeah, what sort of data do you look at?
Our business intelligence group is a group that digs through basically the server logs that we have and can get us reports on ability morph bias and which abilities are used more than others and item sets that people use and whatnot.
Yeah, and
Cool.
that data doesn't necessarily mean, X number of people are using this ability, we have to change it because it's really popular, right?
Right.
Like that's a good thing, right? And some abilities are actually useful in very specific situations. So when we're analyzing that data, we'll see like, this ability isn't very popular. Let's dig into more. Why is this not very popular?
Right.
It's like, well, it's only good, if there's corpses around, and sometimes players aren't fighting, in areas where there's a lot of corpses, so this might not be as popular as another type of ability.
I remember that played a really big role in, was it the Steed? Mundus stone buff? Maybe I'm remembering wrong.
Yeah,
It was one
there's-
of the Mundus stone buffs that you guys changed based on seeing that nobody was really using it.
Yeah, and that one we gave it, a nice little bonus of, now you get the movement speed in addition to the health regen, and it's also thematically appropriate to what I would expect, Steed's doing. So, yeah, that was a really good change based on all
What
that.
steeds are doing.
Well, they run.
I mean, there's a lot that goes into the game too. Like I'm sure when you're looking at something, you have to look at the game in its entirety. Like, I know touched on this on the forums a little bit in one of the replies, but you have to look at endgame PvE and also PvP and now battlegrounds and trials.
And there's various levels
everything.
in just PvE as well.
Right.
Like
Solo
there's
play
the
versus small
solo play
group
versus small
versus
group.
trials,
There's
yeah.
there's the more casual players. There's the hardcore. There's the elites.
Yeah.
And all of the changes that we make, we have to weigh against kind of all of those categories.
Right. So you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier that there's more changes coming in other PTS builds. We have a patch tentatively scheduled for Monday.
That's why we do PTS, right?
Yeah, exactly. There are, I was going to say a lot of changes, but I'm thinking of everybody. Do you want to touch on any of the particular changes that are coming to gameplay? Timid Observer was particularly asking, like, if we're planning on balancing out all the adjustments that we made with the Templar with any improvements to the class specifically.
Yeah, so Spear Shards has been a really hot button issue lately, and
There has been a lot of feedback. Yes.
yeah, and there's a couple pieces to it. So let me break it down one at a time. First is the resource restore of it, and we basically didn't want Templars to feel like, you sort of had to have a Templar to complete types of content because they had this ability that was so powerful, right? So that's why we have the shared cooldown between that and the Necrotic Orb. So if you don't have a Templar, you still be able to get this powerful thing that they're bringing. Of course, a lot of the feedback we got about that is that Templars still want to feel unique about that. So we're sort of balancing those two different, opposite direction pulls of, we don't want you to feel like you have to bring a Templar, but we also want Templars to feel like they're, unique and special, a little bit different. So what we've done that you guys will see coming up on the PTS is that the Templar, when you morph Spear Shards to Luminous Shards, that morph, we've actually changed it. So you will be restoring the person's primary resource pool, but you also give them half of their secondary pool. So in terms of, having other people who are doing damage, the Templar synergy isn't increasing their damage because they're still giving the same amount of max pool that the Necrotic Orb is. However, you're giving them more utility because you're giving them more of their secondary resource. So we feel like that strikes a pretty good balance between, I'm able to bring this sort of cool extra utility as a Templar, but if we don't have a Templar, we can still get this primary pool resource and still, activate our abilities more, which is, what we really want to be on par. I killed Gina with my answer. It was too strong.
I was trying to hold it in. I've had this. Thank you. Audio guys, I'm going to turn that down a little bit.
More coffee.
No, man, it's like spring in Maryland.
Allergies.
Oh, yeah, everything's really blooming. I have extra bonus water, actually.
Bonus water.
Yeah. As
Plus
opposed
5
to just
coffee.
normal average water. So that was the main crux that a lot of people, have been talking about. But there's this sort of more niche issue as well that we resolved where the ability also disorients. And that disorient is frequently breaking because one of their other passives has a chance to do damage to the target, and then the target gets CC immunity. So that's the other piece that we've resolved, is making it so that we just took off the disorient on this ability, and we now have extra damage on the ability to make up for the loss of disorient. So you'll be doing a pretty decent amount of damage, and you also get the utility if you pick the Luminous morph. But if you pick the Blazing Spear morph, then you get a much higher damage. So it's kind of an interesting choice between those two. And as a damage Templar, you're still providing a decent amount of extra utility and potential damage and more ability activations for your allies.
Okay. So there was another question from Lone Wolf 26. This was on the forums. Yeah.
Yes.
He's wondering, do we have any plans to kind of raise the floor for skill rotation DPS builds versus the heavy attack and dot builds that are currently popular in trial settings?
Do you plan on making heavy attacking more fun? I think that's the last part there, which was a nicer way of saying it. And I think some of this goes back to what the original goal was, where we want discrete kind of phases, where there's a burn phase and there's a regeneration phase. So we want heavy attacks to be a part of it. Before it was all light attack weaving. That was how you did the best. Well, that is how you do the best DPS, is you weave light attacks. With what we've done now, there's clear decision points. Do I go all out burn? Do I try to sustain? It slows things down a little bit.
That pollen, I'm telling you.
Sorry. Yep.
It slows things down a little bit, but overall it gets us into a better place. That being said, we do have some plans, some things. If you want to touch on some of those.
Yeah, so we're looking into making it a more distinct decision of, okay, I'm going to go for regen, so I'm going to do some heavy attacks, versus I'm going to go for more damage and I want to focus on doing light attacks. So we're sort of looking at adjusting the ratios of damage and cast times and stuff like that. And in terms of fun, I think some people prefer doing heavy attack rotation, some people prefer doing light attacks. So part of it is just sort of your own personal play style.
True. Yeah.
But also we may look at making some of the attacks a little bit faster so they feel a little bit more responsive. So it's still in the works, but
And he did say May. It's not a promise yet. It's
he
something
promised. He promised.
it's something we're looking at. Kind of like the Grim Focus thing. I saw that pop up in that thread as well, where it's like, hey, you promised you were going to change this, and that was one of the things we said we'd look at. No promises. So I just wanted to make that clear that it's something that we're looking at.
Definitely a fine balance between saying what you are working on and wanting to tell
Yes.
players versus
Yeah, because sometimes
it's a
we get a
promise, yeah.
change in and we test it and it
it doesn't
Not
sucks
quite
or it
there.
doesn't
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we have to change it again. So that's kind of why we try to keep things as much as possible close to our vest so that we're not promising players things.
Right.
Over-promising and
Yes.
under-delivering. Yep. Nope, that makes sense.
Okay.
I just got a PM from somebody saying, I hate allergies too.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
The people are with you, Gina.
Boo allergies. I'm going to butcher this name, Vow?
Vow. Yeah.
We'll go with that. He was asking if we have any plans to sort of re-examine more of the prominent class nerfs, put that in quotes. Like he called out siphoning strikes in particular. Anything you want to call out?
Yeah, we've made a number of tweaks to siphoning strikes actually, and with our changes in general, we wanted to make it a more friendlier, easier ability for more roles to activate. Because with the current iteration, you get a pretty good number of resources, but you have to be light attacking every single second to like really get a good amount of benefit from it. So the changes we've made to this is that we've cut the cost in half so that it's easier to activate if you're lower on resources, and also the the sort of number of attacks you need to make up that cost is a lot lower. We've slightly reduced the number of resources it restores, and then the last thing we have on there is that when the ability ends, it now gives you a big chunk of resources. So even if you don't do any light attacks at all, you still will have gotten some resources returned to you.
It'll still be a net gain. if you
Right,
use it.
exactly. So this way, as using the ability as a Nightblade healer or tank, where you're not going to be doing as many light or heavy weapon attacks, you'll still get benefit from using it. And the more those you're able to squeeze in, you're getting more benefit, but it's not as disproportionate as it was before.
Okay. So it sounds like, from what I'm hearing from you guys, the whole goal of a lot of these changes was to make more abilities usable in more types of roles and builds. Okay, that makes sense.
Similar to that point, D-Pencil won on the forums.
I mean,
Pencil.
there's a number 2 pencil. There has to be a number 1 pencil somewhere.
he was asking if it's intended that all classes are better at some things and not as good at other things, or should all classes be able to perform things equally? What's sort of the goal here behind all of the classes?
And the roles.
Yeah.
I mean, in general, our goal is any class can do any role. And I think we've kind of hit the mark on that. Some classes are a little better at certain aspects of it than others. I don't think that's a terrible thing.
I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Did your PC just reboot? Did Windows update like it does on me all the time?
It says I have 9 minutes until my computer is just going to shut down. So. Okay, well,
God, I can't stand
I'm,
that. It drives me crazy.
just going to do that now.
Technology.
All right, well, this is
It's like
happening.
skip.
I can't. It's like you're going to restart. It even has like a little countdown.
Oh
like
my
here
Oh,
it
wow.
goes.
That's
Okay, well,
That's hilarious.
great feature there.
gonna do that. But please keep
but,
going.
but that being said, if one class is particularly strong, more so than any other class, there's probably a problem there, and we need to take a look at it and look at that in more detail.
Because again, you don't want groups to feel like they have to have that specific
Yes.
class and build.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's a big part of the resource changes that we made, right? Is so that oh well, this class is getting way more resources because it's a percentage of their pools, so they can just get really big sizes of their max stamina, and then they're regenning a ton of stamina whenever they activate ability or something like that. So we looked at every single class, and then like, okay, so what are the actives that the class has? What are the passives? How much are they getting of each of those? And then we looked at that against all the abilities that they're activating to have sort of like, okay, well, they're draining at this rate and they're restoring at this rate. So we wanted to make sure when we compare those two that you're going to be going down over time, not immediately, but slowly over time, so that everyone is actually running out of resources. And then that makes it so that every class has the same number of resources that they're working with. So then it's more about what sort of utility and different things does my class bring, or one class is better at blocking, but one class has a higher max health. So they should all be effective, but they just have different little interesting nuances about
they do it
them,
in different ways. Yeah.
right? Or this class maybe they can offer more stuns to the group. This class can offer some heals to the group while they're tanking, which is example of one of the cool things that the Warden can do, and we'll get into that a little bit later in the show.
Great.
Okay.
I know in general, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the Warden's really good if you're looking for kind of like a solo play because he's got the pets and
Kind of a jack of all trades.
yeah. I don't know where I was going with that. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we can talk a little bit more about that. I mean,
We're going to show some of
yeah.
that later, right?
Yeah, exactly. And every class has 18 abilities, right? So not every class can do every single thing, right? And the Warden, it's nice because it's a little bit overall more balanced in terms of I have the same number of choices of I'm looking at 6 damage abilities, 6 tanking, and 6 healing, whereas the other classes might be weighted a little bit differently for those different things. And that is specifically why we have alternate skill lines to sort of help fill in those different strengths of weaknesses of different
the weapon
classes.
skill lines and
And that's a reason we added the weapon ultimates, for example, right? Because even if your class didn't have a great tanking ultimate, now you can use the sword and shield ultimate to get all the benefits of that, or you could use the resto staff and it now has an ultimate. So if you didn't maybe you didn't think it was great or it didn't work with your playstyle, now you have another option to fill in that hole.
that makes sense. And I know there's been varying feedback of the Warden feeling really overpowered or just right or even underpowered. Can you guys talk about that a little bit?
We're
'Cause
actually
it's been
getting
all
all
over the
3 of
place.
those.
Yeah, I know.
We get
Yes.
OPAF, we get this is just fine, we get Magicka
Needs some
Warden needs a lot of help to get up there in DPS wise, and that's part of the process of trying to collate all that feedback and figure out where each of those feedback sources is coming from.
But the fact that it's not completely unanimous is probably a good thing.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing as the class threads that we see. Oh, my class sucks. My class is underpowered compared to this class, and all of the classes say that. So it's close. I think the Warden in particular, like we've said, because it's kind of this jack of all. I have a bear or animal companions. I have some survivability abilities. I have some heals. I can make my character just with my class skills to kind of be able to do anything fairly well, which translates into solo play as I have great sustain, I can kind of work my way through it. But you can do the same thing with a sorcerer, you can do the same thing with a Nightblade, do the same thing with a DK or even with a Templar. So it really comes down to how you kind of spec your character out and what you want to do with it.
And also, it's like people have just gotten their hands on it too, so it's gonna.
It's 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's gonna take some
weeks of
time to
PTS?
figure out how to exactly optimize it and get like the most amount of damage
And the
if you're trying
Warden's
to do
been
that.
in development for how long?
A year.
A year?
Yeah, a really
So
long time.
The
So
class has been going through its own rounds of iterations.
It
and
has.
nerfs
A
Yeah.
lot of
for
math.
the last year.
A lot of math.
yeah, so it's like we came out with the patch notes, right, and it looked a little imbalanced, right, because you saw like, oh, this class got this nerf, this class got this nerf, and then oh, awesome, there's this new cool Warden, right? Like what you guys haven't seen is like, oh, well, we had to nerf
All the
a bunch of
internal-
these, Warden abilities and buff, and keep changing them, and it was a very iterative cycle process, but we don't have all those patch notes out there,
Right.
so.
And we're also not
now
done.
everyone's going to start asking for them. Like, let us see
We're
them.
also not done. Like this
Yeah.
is PTS 2.
Yeah.
We still have a ways to go.
One other thing that we saw brought up a lot on the forums, and Wicked Wolf in particular was asking to discuss why we continued to balance PvE and PvP together rather than separating them. Is that something you guys could talk about a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think on that one, we want one cohesive game. We want you to be able to learn and understand how combat works in PvE and have that translate into PvP. I mean, it's a little
abilities
different,
the same type
but
of
the
skill.
abilities do the same kind of things. You regenerate resources kind of the same kind of way. it's not a completely different experience. There's already a barrier of entry into PvP right now. When you run against, a really hardcore PvPer that really knows what they're doing, they're gonna paste you.
Yeah.
But at least you're not relearning mechanics. You understand. You kind of go in there knowing that combat works this way, and also
It's a little bit more predictable.
it is. And I've played a lot of games where they've kind of separated the two. And the barrier of entry is so great, and it's such a learning experience, and you have to basically learn two separate games, and that's really tough for the average player.
Yeah, you're like, well, this is so foreign to me. I don't even want to try this, right? Like, we have a ton of awesome content, in PvE, overland dungeons,
Battlegrounds coming
yeah,
too.
battlegrounds, and we want everyone to be able to experience all of that content. So,
And that goes back to kind of looking at the bigger picture that, we know that there's some players that are really good in PvP and yeah, they kick ass. And then there's some people who are intimidated by it, and that's okay too, but
That's why we have Siege.
we wanted to,
Well, in the battlegrounds. You can
And-
go
and
in
the
with your
battlegrounds
guild
as
if you
well.
want.
right?
And I would actually be remiss too if I didn't mention the fact that when you separate the two, you have multiple sets of data. When you have multiple sets of data, when you have to fix an ability, you have to fix it twice or 3 times or 4 times, and if you make a fix in one area and not in the other, you just have problems. So it's really hard to
more
wrangle all that
complicated,
data. And the more moving parts, the potential to make mistakes is increased exponentially.
Right.
yeah, and to speak a little bit more in terms of unifying the game types, one of the changes we made that really helped to this end was that monsters, actually, you could stun them as many times as you wanted to over and over and over again. And we made a change to have the monsters function like the players, so that when you stun the monster, it gets CC immunity in the same way that the player does. So that way, when you're fighting the monster, you're not learning a strategy that, like, I can just keep stunning them, attacking them, and killing them, and then you get into PvP, and you're like, how come...
doesn't work, yeah.
how come I can't stun them anymore? So yeah, that unified game system is really what we want for the game.
That makes sense.
Did your PC reset yet?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do we have
Yes,
time
we're
for,
back.
Do we have time for some questions? Maybe.
Yeah, there were a few other questions that we pulled from the forum thread
Fire away.
that we can maybe touch on. We'll start with an easy one. Somebody was asking if console is going to get a more recent patch when we launch in June than the original one that was on PTS, or kind of what patch are they getting? And I know
I see.
Yeah, he was saying, does console get the 3.0
Or the 3.2 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
they get everything that's on PTS up until the last build on PTS, right?
Yeah, they'll get the same
Plus,
thing.
sometimes a few other little things trickle in.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
they'll get the same thing that PC gets, though, pretty much, for the most part.
that's the goal, yeah.
Yeah.
It really depends on when our cert dates are, and I don't know off the top of my head, but in general, we try to make sure that they're the same.
So basically, if you're a console player, you're looking at the patch notes. What you're seeing now is not the final
Yes.
thing that you're going to be getting.
Yep.
You will be getting all the other patches that PTS is getting. Something else, while we're on the topic of console, a lot of people in chat have been asking what the status is of the trial disconnects. And I know this isn't quite about combat, but there's,
All right, Rich, you got
There's
this. I'll sit here and be nice
they
and
are
happy.
asking for an update, please.
An update, please.
I added the please to be polite.
Thank you, we appreciate that.
So we have the logging in, and
And that went into the last incremental
Yeah.
patch.
yep,
Yep.
and it's been great actually getting the information from the players. I know a lot of people have sent Jess, info.
They've been responding in the thread. We just actually just sent some new ones to the team today
Right, so-
that were really helpful.
So the team is digging through that stuff right now. The data that we're looking at points to a problem with how packets are being sent back and forth between the console and our server and back. So we're looking at it. We at least have ideas of where to look now, whereas before it was a lot harder to kind of figure out. But we don't have a 100% solution for it yet. We're still digging at it. We're still looking at it.
Okay.
Shoot, there was something I was going to ask. I was going to ask. And I forgot.
Like, just that you personally wanted to know, or?
It was like,
Was
I
it a
should
pants
remember to ask
question?
that because it was a really good one. But I guess it was so good I just forgot what
And then
it
your
was.
Maybe we
computer
already answered
restarted, so it kind of got to a weird place.
Mom brain, man. I don't know. It just went out. So one of the other questions that was asked on the forums, why all classes seem to be getting nerfed except for Sorcerer. Now we've made some
They're on the
changes
list.
to the Sorcerer, but I know you have
Yeah, in the
I
next
said that ominously, didn't I? They're on the list.
Yes, yeah.
on the list.
yeah, actually, in the
that's
next
what it
PTS, we do have a change to the Crystal Shards ability. And actually, the Crystal Frag's more if we get the instant cast proc. We're reducing the damage bonus you get on that from 20% to 10%. So this change is aimed at making them a little bit less bursty in PvP because they have a lot of burst options. And then also in PvE, we've been noticing that they are...
You're making sorcerers very sad right now.
I'm
It's
sorry.
so funny. You can tell who the
Sorry.
sorcerers are because they're all going, no, and everyone else is
do
like,
it.
yeah.
Yeah. Also, yeah, their damage was parsing a little bit higher as well. So that change was nice because it fit really well into solving both of those goals for us. Right.
I remember what the other question was.
Nightblades.
No, the streak bug.
Oh, the streak bug.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Where
We can talk
Cold
about
Escape,
Nightblades
like
as well,
you
yes.
press the button and it just kind of doesn't do anything.
Yes, the
We have a
thing-
fix for that in
Fang Rush
Mondays,
rages
right?
about all the time. Yeah, that there's a
Yep.
fix that we have going on to PTS 3.
That's
Okay.
Monday.
Right? Monday?
Yep.
I'm right.
I think.
Right?
Yeah.
I
And
haven't
that-
finished going through the gameplay notes, but I
Yeah.
I
And
think
it
it's
should
Monday.
fix most cases of it. We're not 100% sure it fixed every single time, but that's one of the reasons we wanted to get it in to
Get
this
it
part of
tested.
PTS. Yeah, and have you guys check it out and let us know
Test the hell out
if
of
there's
it.
anything else or like where and are you seeing it in specific locations only now or what
Yeah, the
sort of-
engineer that fixed it fixed one of the root causes.
Yeah.
If there's knock-on
Great.
effects, we'll continue to track it down. But definitely get in there, play it, give us feedback.
Great.
Nightblades. I mentioned Nightblades.
Nightblades, yeah. Rhapsodius. He was asking how we sort of envision Nightblades playing in PvE now.
Yeah. So in PvP, they have a very distinctive style where they're kind of hard to track down. They're teleporting around. They're being very slippery. But in PvE, you don't really have that distinction as much because you're standing there and just kind of stabbing the boss the way everyone else is. So getting a more sort of stealthy feel to the PvE rotation is a longer term goal that we have for Nightblades. We don't have anything to talk about right now, but just having that fantasy, in PvE as well as PvP is something we'd like.
Cool.
And we
for the
do hear
class.
the feedback where Nightblades feel they're not performing as well as some of the other classes. So that's something that we're definitely looking into.
Yeah.
Okay.
Last question, and then we should move on. In terms of trials, since we sort of adjusted all of the class abilities,
Kind of brought
How-
down stain.
Oh, I see. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
how are we compensating in trials or veteran trials where, let's say, you were really close to completing it last time and now you just can't, or it's just
Or the arenas.
yeah, it just doesn't balance out.
So it's definitely something we're aware of. It's definitely something that we're getting a lot of feedback on. We have some ideas of what we can do. We're not going to do anything right now because PTS has been out for 2 weeks. And that's really not enough time for you to get in, kind of evaluate the changes, play with them, see what they are.
Have people kind of relearn.
Right.
Yeah.
What we don't want is those people that could just barely do it or were right on the edge now feel like they just can't do it.
Right.
And that's the feedback that we've been getting from some people. So we're
And
definitely
that
aware.
includes Maelstrom Arena also.
Yeah,
like
Maelstrom
not
Arena,
just the 12
the other
player
trials. It's interesting. I got a note or a PM on the forums where a raid leader was basically saying, the current trials are max DPS. If you're a terrible DPS, you can't get in even if you're mechanically sound. And they actually went into the new trial with the new changes, and they were like, we focused on mechanics, we focused on regen and kind of staying alive, and they were able to progress through the trial. So I think that kind of shows that if you take a little bit of time to kind of experiment with the changes and kind of really focus on what we're trying to do on the mechanics and learning the mechanics and staying alive, a dead DPS does no DPS.
Staying alive.
Don't stand in the stupid, right? Then you can succeed, and that's kind of the goal with all of these changes. So
Okay.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for kind of clearing the air and talking about everything that's been going on. We
Sure.
know it's been a very popular discussion.
it's been an interesting couple of weeks,
Yes.
that's for sure.
Yeah.
And we hope that this information has helped at least a little. We know we can't cover every single topic, but we do hope that this helped.
Indeed. So, moving on, we
Warden.
still need to show off the other 2 Warden skill lines.
Oh, yes.
And
yes.
The last time we had the show, we showed off
This
the
is a packed
animal
show. We got a lot
companions.
going on
I
here.
know, there is a lot. Take a sip, kind of, let's all take a breath and kind of stretch out.
And play the game.
And play the game. So the last show, we showed off the animal companion skill line. You can always revisit that show to kind of catch up on what you missed. But today we're going to be going through Green Balance and Winter's Embrace. So we'll be starting off with Green Balance. Rich is going to be driving while
gonna
Robo
drive.
explains.
Sure.
We are on the development server, so you might
Yes.
see a little bit of funkiness
boy.
here and there, but
I'm not
going to
show that ability. And then I'm also going to do things a little bit differently. I'm not going to run around the world with kind of dev cheats on. I'm actually going to go into a house, a Morrowind house, with a target
That
dummy.
you can get.
That you can get with a target dummy, or I guess target whatever. I call them target dummies, sorry. And kind of show the abilities
dummies.
off so we can actually show the ability and not really focus on other things. So
Works
let's,
for me.
Let's do this.
So this is a new target skeleton, not skeleton.
Target skeleton,
Not really skeleton.
Target Lambert.
It's lambent.
Oh, my mistake.
It is pretty tiny font way up there.
Yeah.
How are players going to be able to get this target,
Their
not
very
skeleton?
own Lambert in their house.
So there is, you can actually get materials in the trial to build this,
Cool.
which is
Great.
cool. And there's another version that you can just buy in the Crown Store if you don't want to kind of go through and spend the time.
And this guy has more health
He does.
than the regular?
A lot more
He's
health.
beefy, yeah.
Really
Time of
beefy.
day.
Oh, yeah, it's a little
Make
dark.
it sunnier. Yeah.
Dev hacks, go.
Dev hacks. Yeah, I said I wasn't going to do dev hacks, and I did.
Nah,
dev
just
hacks.
one. That's
man.
the only one you
I set the
get.
time of day. So let's kind of go through these,
Yeah,
these
let's
abilities.
kick it off.
Okay. So you want to start
So what is-
Green Balance?
Yeah, what is Green Balance overall? Like, what's the deal?
That's
green,
the,
I know.
Yep, that's the Warden's healing skill line. So they're about nature and plants and being able to sort of grow these things and heal their allies with them. And a lot of them, to sort of mirror what nature is, it's a lot of sort of overtime effects where, you're seeing the plants grow, and then, they're sort of blooming and giving you really, really powerful heals in that fashion. The first one here is fungal growth. And this is a really interesting heal.
It's a clever
because-
name because it does grow fungi.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
you
kind of
see-
the theme across the board, right?
Yeah, so around the feet of each character who gets healed by that, you'll see these mushrooms grow up. And it's really cool working with the team, because as they sort of iterated, they're like, how do we give this a little bit more feel and a little bit more personality? So instead of just having a full mushroom just sort of pop out of the ground, which is very unnatural, it's more like an actual mushroom where it's slowly coming out, and then when it sort of gets to that apex, the top of it sort of pops off. And also the play style of it's really interesting because it heals for everything in a cone in front of you, which we've never done before. So your targeting is very important because you're actually you're staying in the game world and you're looking at your allies and where they're standing and their health bars, and you're like, okay, I need to spin over here and heal this guy, and then watch behind me and heal him. So it's very interactive, and it's really fun, and we're really happy with what it's got.
The Warden's healing has a lot more position-based.
It is.
Yeah.
Very much precision.
Healing.
Absolutely, yeah. And so some of it, can require coordination, and they can be extremely powerful because, yeah, if you're able to hit all 6 of your allies with this ability at the same time, that's a really large amount of healing, which is really cool with that.
You intended the Warden healers to be a bit more mobile than other healers because of that?
Yeah, in some instances.
Definitely, they have to pay attention to their surroundings a little bit more than other healers.
Yeah, and with the positioning too, it's like, well, if your allies are a little bit further away from you, because as a cone it gets larger, it's easier to hit them at the back of the cone. Whereas if they're closer, you may miss, but also if they get too far away, it's not going to heal them anymore.
Right.
So there's kind of an interesting give and take with this ability.
Rich, you got a lot of crowns there. People are noticing.
I do. I have a few crowns, yes.
Again,
Thanks, CJ.
this is the development server, so
Very handy.
So let's hit some of the morphs here because we've got a lot of things to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one, you get the regen buffs with Enchanted Growth, which is just a really nice group support kind of thing. I'm healing my allies and I'm giving them a little bit more resources. And it's sort of like, well, the Templar has a way to give this, so does the Warden. And then Soothing Spores is really interesting, because this is a stamina-based one. So you could actually be a stamina healer with a Warden, which is a very cool, unique thing that we're very excited with. So we've seen internally is, you have Soothing Spores, and then you can get the Vigor AVA ability. And then, you're with your stamina resource, you're doing a heal over time, and you're also, able to spray this, pretty decent burst heal to a bunch of your allies. It's also nice, just as, you want to be a stamina DPSer, is, maybe the healer runs out of resources, or there's just a lot of damage going out, is you can spray a couple heals to help out on that front. Yeah.
Next ability.
Sorry, can you real quick go back to stamina? There's just one thing
He's like, no, not next
I want to go to the next
about
one.
is so we also have this, if you heal an ally that is closer to you, it's 15% stronger. So that sort of plays into this positioning aspect we're talking about of, it's harder to heal allies right on top of you, but you'll get this cool extra bonus if you do. So. Moving on, this is the Healing Seed ability. So this ability, you initially cast it and the seeds are just growing and growing and growing, and it doesn't actually provide any upfront healing. But then once the plants finish blooming and it reaches its apex, the pollen bursts and makes everyone cough and choke. And
Sounds about right.
and also heal them for a very large amount. So this ability is really interesting because it kind of requires some advanced planning and some anticipation for like where your allies are going to be and what the damage is. But the trade-off for that is that this ability is a lot cheaper in terms of the amount of resources it takes, and also it heals in a big area for a very large amount of damage. So it's an interesting distinct ability from the first one. And Budding Seed is a very cool take on this because instead of having to wait until the ability gets all the way to the end and blooms, you can actually activate the ability early. So you can put it down there and then you see, oh, this ally took a really big hit. I'm worried he's going to die. You don't have to wait until it activates. You can do it yourself. So it gives you a little bit more control, which is really cool. And then the other one...
Maryland Spring right there.
Yeah, that's what we're all breathing in right now, the corrupting pollen. So this one is generally more useful in PvP because it's a healing debuff, and there are some monsters that healing debuff, so it could be useful sometimes. But yeah, it's really cool because it's an AOE defile, so everything that's standing in the area is getting debuffed. So this one, it's kind of interesting because instead of just looking for your allies, you're also looking for your enemies when you're casting this. And the sort of the most efficient way to use this ability is if you can like throw it right in the center where there's a lot of stuff going on. Then,
So it does kind of double duty.
Yeah, then all your enemies are going to be weaker with their heals, and then all your allies will also get the nice big heal.
And there's no magic or stamina cost for this?
That's just we have some dev tools on going with that one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, people were asking like,
Wow, all the Warden abilities are free. This class is OP, pay to win.
Yeah.
No, they all have costs. It's fine.
Here, how about I change? Well, actually, no, because I want to show the ultimates a few times. Next.
So yeah,
Okay.
these do cost something.
They do.
Just to be clear.
Yes.
Okay, so the next one is Lotus Blossom, which I really love the way we sort of synced up the animation with the effects there of having the lotus flower around your feet. Looks really cool. This one is this ability is nice because it sort of works pretty well for all types of roles. Tank, healer, DPS. It's just giving you some extra healing to go on with your attacks. So if you're healer, you're like channeling your heavy attacks to get your mana back. Well, this will also be healing your allies while you're doing it. Or if you're DPSer, it's like, oh, I can get some heals back while I'm attacking the target, and it's also giving you buffs at the same time. So it's just kind of an all-around.
Here, I'm going to turn this off so
Okay.
people can actually see that, yes, they do have costs.
Right on.
Okay, where are we at? Lotus Flower?
Yep.
Yeah.
Somebody was just asking if they're all flower-based animations for this.
Well,
the mushrooms.
we have we have mushrooms, we
They're
have
all
vines,
plants.
Yeah.
we have trees. So it's a lot of different things you find in nature.
Nature-y.
I had two
Yeah.
on there. There you go. See?
And sort of Morrowind
Costs.
theme a little bit with like the mushrooms
look,
and stuff.
costs.
There you go. There
Costs
you
on
go.
all of them, see?
Yep.
There
There
you
you
go.
go. Stamina magic.
Not
Everything. Yep.
Okay, morphs.
Yeah. Yeah. So Green Lotus. This one is sort of the stamina users version of it, so that they can get the buff to the damage that they're doing, as well as have the heals rolling on them or nearby allies. And then the Lotus Blossom, it's you also get the spell critical, so you're getting the buffs and the heals all together in one thing. So it's a really nice package to have. And then we have the
Last
sort
one.
of, this one you have, you can see you have the extra effect around your arms to show that you're getting that's sort of a universal communication we use
Yeah.
to see like, oh, this guy has some sort of buff that's making him do more damage specifically. And then we also have the floating sort of petals around your hands.
Sorry. The mobile robo despawned.
Oh, yeah, you need to have one of those. He's handy.
We'll save
Yeah,
it for later.
we'll come back to you.
Yep.
You
All right.
just wait for it. You're coming.
Last one.
Did we
Nature's.
skip living vines?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did we?
Yeah.
My bad.
Yes, Living Vines is an example of a not not flower or fungus ability, which looks really cool. Like when it ends, you see the vines break off and explode out of your body, and it just looks really cool while it's active. The vines are wrapping around and healing you. So this is basically a heal over time ability, but sort of an interesting tweak on it where it only procs when you actually get hit. So this one is really good to put on like a tank because they're getting hit all the time. So this is going to give them a ton of healing. And then I should talk about the targeting of this a little bit too. The targeting of this is pretty interesting. It just hits an ally sort of standing in front of you.
So it's straight.
Yeah, straight on in front of you. So it's a little different take on it, but you sort of just line it up like you do with the cone. So it's sort of a common theme among a couple of these abilities. So Leeching Vines, this one you put it on the target and anyone hits them is going to be debuffed, and then your allies will get health from attacking them. So this further reinforces this of like put it on the guy who's getting wailed on, and then all the enemies will get debuffed who are attacking him. And then Living Trellis, this one it gives you a nice little bonus heal at the end of it when it expires. So it's
The target or the warden?
the target.
Okay.
So it's another one of those like sort of interesting sort of timing things, right? Of like, oh, if I can just survive a little bit longer, this thing will fall off and then give me a nice bonus heal. So there's a lot of sort of elements of timing and positioning and strategy in this class. The last ability is, it's probably my favorite in terms of like the fun factor in the green balance. Like, it's not always like, oh my god, I changed the way the battle is happening, but it's like, oh, my ally's like running off without me, or like I'm low on stamina and he's all the way up there, so I can just pull myself right to him. And the initial implementation of the ability was just the pull, and then we changed it later in development to actually put this heal over time on the target, and it actually gives a pretty strong hot
Over 10 seconds.
yeah, over 10 seconds on the target. So, you can get yourself out of trouble and also help the guy maintain his health pool.
Or get yourself into trouble.
Yeah, you gotta be very careful with this because if they're standing in the red circle and you pull, then you're in the red circle too. So,
Yep.
so make sure you use it at the right time.
Or you get cleaved. That's always fun.
Yep. Yeah, you gotta watch out with this. And then the two morph choices, it's either the Bursting Vines, it's giving the target a big heal, so it's I can sort of pull to a guy when he's in an emergency type of situation to help sort of bail him out with that immediate burst heal. Or Nature's Embrace, if you want a hug from the vines, you can get this one, and it's sort of a friendlier version because then the heal over time you get a copy of that in addition to the ally that you put it on. So this can be really good in PvP, if both of you are being focused, or just to help with the incidental damage. You don't have to worry about healing yourself as much while this is active.
The next one, which is probably why I had no cost.
Yeah.
So we can show the ultimate. This has a cost. Just saying, it has a cost. This is their big Healy ultimate.
Yeah, and so this one has sort of two important aspects of it. First off, this is an extremely cheap healing ability, and it provides a big burst heal initially. So the Wardens don't have the way the Templar does of a super huge healing bomb that they can just throw out as much as they want. So they're sort of limited by their ultimate, but they can at least, every time they fill up their ultimate bar, they can give a really big burst heal to, it'll give one target in the area, and then it's growing these trees to heal over time for all the allies in the area. So it's sort of a unique take on having a big bomb heal. And then the Enchanted Forest, it gives you ultimate back when you heal a low health ally, so it's really trying to encourage you to use that play style of, use as burst heal when your ally gets really low, and then we give you a refund so you can use it in that way again faster. And then Healing Thicket, that one is if you're more, worried about healing a lot of different allies at the same time, or you just want, to have as powerful of an effect at one go of it, or it's hard for you to get the exact timing right. With the other one is this one is just okay. This is a really effective version. It just lasts really long and gives you a lot of healing for allies in the area.
Do we want to touch on the passives real quick and then move on to the next
Go
one?
over them real quick.
Okay. So accelerated growth. This is actually one of the ones we nerfed in one of the latest updates.
We adjusted.
Yeah, adjusted. Yeah, that's a good word. I like that. So now the allies you only get this if the ally's under 40% health instead of 50%. So there's kind of like some risk reward gameplay of like, well, do I really want to wait this long to heal him and get this potential buff, or do I just want to make sure he's topped off and at full health at all times?
Yep, and it lasts for 3 seconds.
Yeah,
that was one of the things we reduced the time on it, so it's harder to keep up.
Yeah, you're not just going to be like, oh, this is about. I just always have this extra healing bonus. Right.
It's more situational.
This one, it gives magicka or stamina when you heal with green balance ability. So this is sort of a standard resource restore ability that synergizes with all the different heals. And one of the nice things about that is we have abilities that stamina or magicka can use to heal themselves. So sort of regardless of your play style, you'll be able to at least use one of these green balance abilities and get this heal if that works for you. Emerald Moss is just sort of the more you dedicate towards being a healer of this type, the better your heals are going to be. And then lastly, Maturation is really cool because it works against burst damage since it gives the targets the 10% extra max health. And we did make this a buff category because we didn't want people stacking it with Warhorn. But it means that if you happen to not have someone with Warhorn, or Warhorn is not up all the time, then bringing a Warden will help people be, that much more resilient and harder to take down.
Cool.
Excellent. So that wraps up green balance. I think we should take a quick break to do a giveaway. Let everyone kind of stretch, get some water,
Hunching over
make a
that desk.
sandwich. Yeah. What should the keyword be?
What are we giving away?
We're going to give away a home of your choice.
Also,
maybe
tell me more
one
about
of the
these
manors.
sandwiches.
I already said in chat, I don't know if it's possible to do the island, but we'll at least do
check.
a manor. Yes, manor
Okay.
or lower, depending on whatever you
Wow,
want.
that's a hell of a giveaway.
Right? It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We all decided together. They all wanted the 10 million crowns, but I told them,
Sorry.
sorry. So how about we do shrooms?
Sure. Sure.
There's mushrooms.
Okay.
So shrooms, case doesn't matter. Go for it.
You want to tell them how to spell it? Are they spelling it right?
They got it.
All
Yep.
right.
Oh, they got it. Here they all come.
Yeah,
They got
okay.
it. Shrooms, y'all.
So while they're doing that, what is the what is the general rule of the skill line that we're going to be looking at next? Winter's Embrace. This is the
tanking one.
tanking one, right? Okay.
So you're using frost magic to protect yourself and your allies by creating barriers and wards and stuff like that. That's hard to break through.
And green balance was the healing, and animal companions is kind of utility and DPS.
Yeah, so it's all straightforward and clear that oh, I want to be doing this type of thing in the game. This is where I go to do that.
But you can mix and match.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And just some general housekeeping real quick. We are on the development server.
I
Rich
cheated.
had no
I'm
cost
sorry.
because he just wanted to show everyone all the
few
abilities,
times.
but these abilities do have costs. They're not free,
And apparently have 10 million crowns.
and you have 10 million crowns,
Because it's the dev server.
as you should.
And we have to test things.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
also, some of you were asking about the home decoration contest.
Oh
and who
my
won that?
gosh.
We just chose our winners.
It was really hard.
It was
There were some
fantastic.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, they'll
Really
see when
cool.
we announce it, but
Yeah,
holy cow.
we're planning on announcing next week. There'll be an article on the website, so stay
Unbelievable.
tuned. They are really cool.
Yep.
I think we're going to have to share a lot of the entries. 'Cause there were so many.
Yes.
I don't even know how we chose.
Gina
think-
does. Poor Gina. Gina had to get it all.
There were a lot of entries.
Yep.
A lot of entries. So if you see everyone typing shrooms into chat, that's because we're doing a giveaway. Give you a couple more seconds. Do you have everything kind of ready to go?
Sure.
That sounded delicious.
I tried to not be in the mic. I don't know how well that picked up.
You're all right.
Okay, so we will choose our winner for your very own home in Tamriel. Winner
Who
is
do we got? Ducati?
Ducati, maybe Ducati?
I think it's Ducati.
I like Ducati better, but
That's not how the
Maybe it's-
actual Ducati is spelled.
Congratulations, Ducati.
Either
We're gonna
way,
assume
Either
it's
way.
Ducati or Ducati. Either way,
Ducky. How about that?
Ducky.
we'll send
Sure.
Ducky a message. So while I do that, if you guys want to get started with
The
Winter's
Sure.
Winter's Embrace.
Winter's Embrace.
Yeah.
So we're only going to show the tooltip for the first one because it's the visual is a little blocky, shall we say? Gina
Yeah.
says I should show it. Okay, I'll be a troll. It's on Dev. There you go. See, it's a little blocky.
So
Work in progress. Work in
yeah,
progress. Work in
we've
progress.
gotten some feedback on the PTS, and we're in the middle of
wasn't
iterating
quite-
it. So that's kind of like what an asset looks like.
Gina
when
did
it's-
It's my fault, obviously.
Yeah, nice zoom in there.
It'll go away in a
Full
minute.
block.
There you go.
All
Okay.
right, yeah.
So
this
Frostcloak.
is a bug that is only on the dev server.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's just when it's in development and you have
Everyone
it
in
down.
chat is like, keep it in!
Of course.
Ice
There's
Cube.
actually this really funny during development. One of our playtests for Stonefist.
I remember this.
We had a PvP playtest,
Yeah.
and the asset was in development. So it was like instead of throwing this rock, it was just a huge red box, and it would knock people over. So it's just really satisfying, like throwing the box
boxes
and
at people.
like it knocked
Amazing.
over. But yeah,
So
not
Frostcloak.
final. Still working on it. Frothcloak is kind of analogous to the DK's Molten Weapons, where instead of giving all the people in your party a damage buff, you're instead giving them a defensive buff. So it's really nice because it'll free up bar slots for other people in your group who wanted to run that ability, or it'll just give them extra protection if they happen to be standing in circles or taking damage, and all kinds of stuff like that. And the two morphs are, hey, I want to be very selfless and cast this in a much wider radius to guarantee that it's being cast on everyone in my group with expansive, or Ice Fortress is sort of specifically more designed for I'm a tank player and I need the most amount of damage mitigation possible. So you get the extra 8% from minor protection. Yeah, we won't worry about casting the morphs or anything. 'cause
Nope.
Well, we've done
We
enough
don't
of
want.
that.
We don't want to be Ice Cube.
We don't know that. So the next one, Impale. This ability, it deals damage to everything in the area, and it slows it down, which is great as a tank because it sort of helps your allies who are getting attacked by different targets to be able to get away from them. And also it has a really neat feature of the damage over time it deals is actually based on your max health. Instead of most abilities base it on your either your your magicka or your stamina pools. So this is nice because it gives you as a warden you can support the team by adding a pretty good amount of damage and also being more survivable. And you also, if you remember, the maturation passive where you're getting extra max health, that sort of synergizes with this as well to make this ability do even more damage. So there's as you experiment with the different skills and stuff, there's some cool little combos in there that you can find out. So the two morphs, gripping shards, this one as a tank, if you really want to lock down the enemies and make sure they don't move either, so they're getting hit with all the AoEs of your allies or just to protect them, that's a great morph to pick. And then this other one, Winter's Revenge, is really cool because we specifically change this ability because it, instead of scaling off of max health like the other two, this one scales off your magic damage. Because we wanted an ability that would support the Warden DPS line to give them more options. Because like we were saying, there's only 6 abilities or options in the damage line. So specifically, we wanted to make this a ranged ability so that it sort of synergizes with your abilities. And if you're doing any sort of range bonus from being far away from the target potentially, or just so you're not constantly having to like run up to the target and then drop this and then back up and use your ranged abilities from far away. And then also we wanted that sort of Ice Mage caster feel, and there were no abilities that supported it. So
you could use this with like dive.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you could use, maybe you have a Frost Staff build and when you want to use a lot of Frost abilities, this is a really great complement to that loadout. Arctic Wind. So this ability is really great for tank because it gives you some heal based off your max health. You'll notice it also gives you a heal over time. We initially just had it give you a big chunk of healing, but it made the ability feel a little bit too spammy. Where it was just like, oh yeah, it just gives you 20% of your max health before. So you would just like cast this ability over and over and over again, and it wasn't really fun or strategic. So we sort of spread the healing out over time, but we still wanted the upfront burst so that you could use it as a tank in case, oh, I'm taking a lot of heavy damage, oh, I can use this.
And I need to help the healers out a little
Yeah,
bit.
exactly. And let them like restore their mana or just get their positioning right so that they can cast a heal on me. And then the 2 morphs of the ability. The first one, Polar Wind. I've been having a lot of fun using that in the trial, actually, when we tested internally, because this one, it also heals an ally. So I can be, wailing on the boss or whatever, and then he casts a big AoE on me.
What weapon is this?
That's like a sword of some sort. I have a shield in my other hand. So it's nice, like you see one of your allies, they're like in that circle with you, and they get hit for a chunk of damage too. You can pop that, and they're getting healed up as well. So it's nice to have that sort of support utility, and it's based on your max health as well. So even if their health might not be that high, you're still giving them a pretty effective heal, which is pretty neat.
Cool.
And then Arctic Blast. This one, it deals damage to nearby enemies as well. And it also scales on your max health. So you have a couple of options of sort of damage over time.
Based on health.
Yeah, based on health,
Yeah.
which sort of creates a sort of a distinct different feel for this tank. And we actually changed the design of that particular morph quite a bit in testing Battlegrounds, because our design of it was that it would heal you, but if you're already at full health, it would deal damage to everything around you, which is like, oh, hey, that's really cool. It'll do different things contextual to how you're playing. However, it meant that pressing that button was always the right thing to do. Because either
always doing damage.
Yeah, either I'm low health and I need to heal myself, or I'm full health and I need to do damage to things. So you
Right.
didn't have any strategic
Reason
play or reason to not cast that ability, or even any other ability. Our tanks were just like casting that over and over and over again, and we'd have like 3 wardens just standing there, just like
Casting
spamming that
ability.
ability, and they were healing and damaging each other back and forth, and it was really silly. So we've gotten to a much.
Like a fun time in PvP.
It was fun for like that one, but even like towards the end of like the hour-long playtest, people were like, "Really, this is what we're doing with this ability?"
Sounds like a good change.
yeah, we're happy with what it is now. So next up is the crystallized shield. This one, one of the nice things that we were able to iterate on with the art team is to get the effects to line up very precisely with the gameplay of it. So this absorbs 3 projectiles, and it has 3 shields there. You can see 1, 2, and 3. And when you get hit with one projectile, one of the shields breaks. And there's that relation, each time one shield breaks, it, communicates to you exactly how many more you have left, instead of being like, oh, I have to look in my buff trackers and see how many more it can do. And the morphs of this are really cool. Yeah, so this one, Crystallized Slab, it shoots a projectile back each time one of those shields get broken. So you can shoot up to 3 projectiles at the enemies. I guess we don't have any enemies around to actually attack you and see it, but it's cool. It lobs like a big old frost mortar at the enemy.
Snowball.
Yeah,
snowball.
yeah. So it ends up doing like pretty good damage, especially if you can hit the guy with all 3. So that one's been a lot of fun. And then the other one is it gives you ultimate when one of the shields breaks, and it gives you a pretty big chunk of ultimate. So with sort of both of these morphs, we're trying to encourage you to cast this at the right time and rewarding you for casting it, because it only lasts for 6 seconds. So that's a pretty narrow window. So you need to sort of make sure that you cast it at the right time instead of like, oh, I'm just always going to keep this up and I'm going to take less damage.
So for something like Crystal Frags, where it's got multiple projectiles, does it hit once per shield, or does each projectile take down a shield?
Yeah, each projectile takes down one of the
shield.
3
Okay.
shields. Yeah.
And then
good
fun
old Frozen Gate.
Gate.
This is the reason for the mobile robo that we have hanging out in the back.
The mobile robo.
Yeah, in case you're wondering.
It's despawned. Oh no, it hasn't.
No, he's still there. So we have like the base.
Somebody was asking, they're like, what's with the naked guy? And I'm like, there's not a naked guy.
He's right there.
As
Mobile
a
robo.
dev
Sorry.
server special
Yeah.
target dummy.
So basically, this is the same as the base target dummy we have, but instead of just standing there and taking a beating, he'll actually chase you down and then stare at you a lot.
It's creepy.
Which comes in handy when we want to test movement abilities like this. So yeah, this one you put it down as sort of like a trap, and then when the enemy runs over it, they trigger the trap, and then they get pulled right to you. So this is a really great ability for a tank because you can put it sort of preemptively on the back line to help protect your healers.
Yeah.
And then it'll pull the enemy right to you, and it also roots them in place. So then it gives you a second to either turn around and taunt them, or snare them, or do something else like that. And then for the morphs of this, there's the enemy deals reduced damage, which is really handy. It applies the major main buff, so it's a pretty heavy damage debuff, which is pretty fair because you can the enemy has to hit the trap, so it's not like you can just keep spamming it and cast it over and over on the enemy. But it just supports that. My ally's taking a lot of damage. Let me have this in their area, and then if the target does happen to hit your ally again, they will be doing less damage to them.
Toss it on a healer and then go do your thing. And then when the healer pulls threat, aggro, mob goes to the tank, which is awesome.
Yep. And then the other one is nice because it adds a synergy. And when allies press a synergy, it actually pulls them to you. So it's sort of a nice sort of get out of jail card for allies if they're in a lot of heat. They can activate that and get out of town. And
Thank you, Mr. Mobile Roll. Now we have the ultimate.
good work.
Ultimate.
Yeah. So this one, it has a defensive buff for you and your allies. So the positioning of this is pretty interesting
Was this the one that was in the trailer?
Yeah. They did a really good job of showcasing that. So this one, you see the little floating snowballs around you. That's communicating that you have the defensive buff on you, and you're sort of choosing: do I want to stand next to my allies and make sure I'm protecting them, and also since you're the epicenter of this storm, your allies may be moving around, and so you're trying to constantly readjust your positioning to make sure you're protecting as many of them as possible, or the key allies, maybe a certain guy's being attacked a lot and he's like freaking out and running all over the place, so you got to find him.
I had to turn no cost off so they could see it was expensive.
Oh, it's not,
Yeah.
And it
it's
wasn't
not a cheap
free.
one.
Yeah.
This one's not cheap.
And so this one can synergize nicely with like the pull from the nature's the green balance thing of like, oh, this guy's running out of my storm effect, let me pull myself over to him and make sure he's getting that defensive buff. And it also deals damage, so you may want to try to intermingle and get some of your allies and some of your enemies. Like your positioning is really important with this. And then Northern Storm is 8% max magicka while slotted, because we wanted to give a passive bonus to make it also interesting and attractive for possible damage dealing classes, or as a tank, you can just like, I can cast a couple extra abilities, with the max magicka. And then Permafrost is probably as a tank, this is actually more of what you want to be doing depending on your build and like how many magicka abilities you're activating and if you're trying to do a lot of heals. But this one, it's going to stun all the enemies around you. We have tried to avoid AoE stuns in general with our game because, being CC'd is not really that fun. Granted, you can get out of it with the CC break, which is nice, but, just in terms of general balance, that's the reason with this is that the ability actually has to hit the target 3 times. So they see you cast the ability.
So you can get out of
You
it.
have a
Exactly.
chance. There's
Yeah.
counterplay there.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, let me roll dodge.
So it's not an instant AoE stun.
Exactly.
Passives?
Yeah.
Let's knock these out real quick.
Glacial Presence. So this increases the chance that you're going to apply chill to enemies, which the reason that's kind of important for the Frost Tree specifically is that this also applies Minor Maim and reduces their damage done. So these ticking AoE frost patches are now also debuffing the enemies and reducing the damage they deal. Pretty great for a tank. Frozen Armor, it just gives you a bunch of armor based on how many abilities you have slotted. So the more you're committing to being a Frost Tank
Winters
Warden,
embrace abilities.
the better it'll be. Icy Aura, that it just reduces the effectiveness of snares. There is probably a
There's
tooltip
a few.
bug floating
Right.
around where it's actually changing your snares. That's not actually happening, just a tooltip bug. It's only snares applied to you. So that's sort of, as a tank, it
Yeah,
lets
that'd
you...
be a bad passive.
Yeah, that'd be a really bad passive. So this sort of helps you position yourself, since snares won't be hitting you quite as hard, and a lot of these things sort of require you to be in the right spot to activate them. And then the last one, Piercing Cold, it increases physical and frost damage. So a lot of these abilities are dealing frost damage, so it sort of helps with that whole, I'm a tank, but I have some options for dealing a little bit of damage. Not a spammable damage ability, where it's just like, oh, I'm just pressing this and doing a ton of damage, and I'm a really hard to kill tank. So that's why we specifically made all these damage things damage over time, so you couldn't just load up a huge damage hit on someone.
Cool. This skill line's like a lot of fun.
Man, you went through a lot of stuff really quickly.
Good job.
Keeping it moving.
Yeah. I know we had some time limits. We were trying to make sure we could hit. So.
Still lots to cover.
Sorry
Lots
if
to cover in
that was
the
too
show.
fast for anyone.
They can play back.
Okay.
that's
There
true.
you go. Yep, absolutely.
True. Well,
Do we have time for any questions, or are we kind of out of time at this point?
we need to wrap up.
Okay.
And the reason we need to wrap up is because there is another stream starting very soon.
Yeah.
it's gonna
Yes,
be
Legends,
Yep.
Elder Scrolls Legends.
Pete
So
Hines
you
is
guys
going
should
to be
stick
playing
around for that.
Legends. Indeed. Well, as always, it was great having you guys on
Sure
the show.
thing.
Thank you guys
and
so
thank
much.
you.
And we
Yeah.
hope you enjoyed seeing the 2 remaining Warden skill lines and hearing about the gameplay balance changes. If you have any other questions, which we're sure you do,
We answered
look
every
for 'em on the
question. There will
forums.
never be another question.
Ever. So our next show is going to be in 2 weeks on May 12th at 3 p.m. We will be back. We'll be discussing kind of your first day in Morrowind and what you can expect and what you should look for. So
what should
it'll
you
be
do on day 1?
a nice prep.
There's so many options, right?
there
It's like, do I want to get into the PvP? Do I want to try out a Warden?
Battlegrounds.
Yeah. Go through the main story.
you know what Rich is going to do.
Battlegrounds, yeah.
All
Well,
right,
great.
well, thank you guys so much, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having
Everybody
us.
have a great weekend.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.